Hey there, welcome to Supercharged Fridays. I am back home after the last two Fridays being in London. And if you are new here, welcome. This is 96 weeks of Supercharged Fridays. You've got some catching up to do. I'm kidding. And if you've been around and you've been watching us for a while, you know the drill. Come in the comments and say hello. Tell everybody else where you're logging in from. This is a mini networking as well, and get some coffee, get some tea, make yourself comfortable, get a block of notes and a pen. We're going to have a lot of fun. And speaking of London, my guest today, Arpad Szakal, is actually in London and we're live streaming from there. And Arpad and I met thanks to LinkedIn and social media some months ago this year. And we are going to talk all about like headhunting and networking and combining these two awesome topics together. So, Arpad, very warm welcome to Supercharged Fridays.
Thank you, Sonal, for the opportunity to be here. Thank you for the invite.
I'm excited to have this conversation. We have so much to talk about. So, before we get cracking on headhunting, I have to ask you, where does this term come from? Because it sounds almost like violent.
And quite tribal, right?
Like
We're
literally hunting heads.
yeah. I think it is what we do. Is literally hunting people's heads. I mean, it's quite an intrusive thing. What we do. This is not HR. This is hardcore sales. You're selling the opportunity. You're selling the candidate. You're selling it basically to all the different stakeholders involved. You need to get the mandate as well. So it's no matter which direction you're looking, it's sales.
It's sales, it's hunting and it's sales. And you clearly are, either you love it or you hate it in terms of this profession. So, Arpad, for anyone who's new to you and is not familiar, I highly recommend, first of all, that you follow Arpad on LinkedIn if you don't already. And Arpad, give us a little bit of an intro on your backstory in terms of what you do today and how you got there.
Yeah. Originally from Budapest, but have been living in the UK for a long time. Went to university here and then started to practice law. I'm a lawyer by background, and have been doing search for coming up to 7-8 years now, focusing on the industrial sectors. So now it's including but not limited to things like transportation, energy, renewable energy. Logistics, freight, cargo, things like that. So anything that moves.
Anything that moves.
Exactly.
Okay, I love it.
I'm an aviation enthusiast, so it's basically my interest is very much around getting from A to B, basically. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
And
fantastic.
do quite a bit of coaching as well with people who need it or want it on the career development, career planning side of things. So, but it's the main focus is very much search and also assessment, basically. So,
Got it. Perfect. So I also just remembered something, that it was a post of yours back in April that I got introduced to Rajat Jaiswal, who is a pilot with Spice Airlines in India.
yeah.
No, is it Spice? Is that what it's called?
SpiceJet.
SpiceJet. And
Exactly.
thanks to you, I got to know
Yeah,
about him, and I have a brilliant
yeah,
podcast episode with him. And we talk
yeah,
about, also having insurance in your career. Sometimes when one industry is down, having another skill set. And guess what? He's got a burger chain,
yeah. Exactly.
burgers and
It's unbelievable.
burgers and
That's why.
planes. You don't
Yeah,
think of burgers and planes together. So that is a great example. And I got to know about him
yeah,
through you. So
yeah, yeah,
fantastic. I see
yeah.
we have friends coming in from pretty much around the world. Very warm welcome. Lovely to see you guys. And please bring in your questions related to the topic, because our topic today is headhunter networking. Anjali, I see you have a question. If we get time, we'll get to it. I think it's a little bit unrelated. But for now, we're going to focus on, chances are I'm going to ask questions that you already have on your mind. But anyway, keep them on hand. So, Arpad, we want to know, first of all, for someone who's not maybe that familiar, the term headhunting, recruiting can be interchangeably used. So help
Yeah,
us understand, how are they different?
yeah. So recruitment is generally associated with lower level jobs. It's
Okay.
basically you've got a requirement, and then you throw the CVs at the employer, and basically you're not the one who's weeding out the good ones from the best or from the rest, but basically it's the employer who does the work of screening the candidates, who really identifying what their strengths, weaknesses are. Recruitment is normally for lower level roles, like 50, 60, 70,000 pounds annual yearly
Salary.
compensation or
Yes.
salary. And then search is, it normally starts from 100K, 120K, basically base annual salary. It's for the higher level, more senior level roles. It's also exclusive. So now it's basically as a headhunter or a search consultant, you are exclusively retained. There's
Yes.
no one else working
Yes.
on it, only you or your
Yes.
firm. And that would be another important. And you're not only um, sending CVs, but it's normally a very detailed report that you write with all the pros and cons of an individual candidate. And basically, it's a whole 360 sort of
Yeah.
service that you provide, basically.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work, and the fees illustrate that.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
The
exactly,
headhunter fees
exactly.
are much more.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. It's lovely to see a few new names here of people that I haven't seen before on Supercharged Fridays. So you guys are extremely welcome. Sky, I see a new friend in Nepal. Fantastic. Hi, Shelley. All right. So this was a brief sort of rundown on how headhunting and recruiting are different. Now, Arpad, most people are aware, so I'm not going to bore people by asking the questions of. There's so many advantages of having a good headhunter on your corner, like with you, working with you. However, we know the headhunter works for the company. It's a career coach who's on your corner, but nevertheless, how can we find the right headhunters that can help our job search? Because the world is flooded. Some
Hmm.
people look like headhunters, but they're actually recruiters. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Sometimes it's kind of there's an overlap going on. And someone who's like now looking at upgrading their career to those type of compensations that you're talking about. Help us to find these people.
I think one of the most important things to do is to be selective. So now it's you really need to look for a search consultant in your field. If it's sales that you're in, if it's business development, if it's procurement, it really needs to be someone who knows your industry, your function inside out. Boutiques, like I work for a boutique firm,
Yeah.
they tend to specialize on particular industries, functions, regions of the world as well. So they can be
Yeah.
geographically focused as well. Um, you need to really interview these consultants. You need to understand what's your role in the firm. You practice what's your practice focused on. What are the examples of your past clients and positions that you've filled? Ask them about their past experience placing someone like yourself. Basically,
Mm.
these are probably the best questions that you can almost interview them, like you're going to engage them as your own consultant. Basically, that's probably the best way to go about it.
Okay, I think these both are very useful points because the riches, the there's an expression: the riches are in the niches. The more niche and the more specialized they are, you want depth. That's what
Yeah,
you're saying. Breadth
yeah,
is good, but there are some people who are doing everything for everyone, and they are not necessarily the right ones for you. So if I'm looking at aviation, and I'm
yeah,
looking at a steward role,
yeah,
or I want to
yeah,
fly a plane, chances are our path will be a little
yeah,
more helpful
yeah,
to me than
yeah,
the Russell Reynolds and Egon
yeah,
Zenders, those
yeah,
big shiny names, because they may
yeah.
not have that specialization. Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Exactly, exactly. I mean, those guys are good, and that no one has ever gotten fired because they retained Egon Zender. But I think it's important to realize that some of the search boutiques out
Yeah,
there are
yeah,
much more capable of handling it
yeah.
when it comes to a certain sector, for
Oh
example.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and as an ex-HR director, I have worked with boutique search firms, and they are more hungry.
Yeah,
They have more, I don't know, it's a different work ethic because there's a lot more on the line and it's more direct. Like you
Yeah.
don't have to go through layers of people to get to the person who's my contact. That person is always like on call, and interview them. That's a great point. um, have just like we would with anyone, right? We want to hire someone to do something for us, we have to interview them. So why should it not
Yeah.
be the same thing? All right, fantastic. And uh, I like interesting comments here. Definitely chat prior to partnering. You know, you don't want someone practicing on you, Erica. We're not guinea pigs here. It's a little bit awkward. And I see a question here already from Saurabh. So Saurabh says, "How do you contact?" Okay, Saurabh, this is the entire premise of our chat today. So you will be hearing about it. So all right. So we've covered two questions so far. For anyone who's joining us, don't worry, it's not too late. We talked about how is headhunting different from recruiting. We talked about finding the right headhunters. And so Arpad, where do we find them? Like Google, or like how do we like hunt them?
Um, the tough thing, Sonal, is that headhunters are not in the business of chatting to people just for the sake of having a chat. It's they are the ones who want to talk to you, not the other way around. It's normally so they're not in the business of getting you a job. A
Yeah.
headhunter is there to fulfill a specific
Yeah.
criteria or a need, a business need, for a client, basically. So we want to increase sales. Okay, then we need a sales director. We want to get more business in. Okay, we need a business development director. We need to increase efficiencies in our procurement practices. Then we need a chief procurement officer. So you need to think that. So it's very client driven. It's not candidate driven. It's all about what the client needs,
Yeah.
and not what the can. So it's don't confuse this.
Yeah.
We're not in the business of getting you a job.
No.
So that's why boutique search firms are probably a best bet than trying to to talk to a big shot at Spencer Stewart or Corn Ferry, or especially if they are partner level or sector leaders, because they don't have the time. They're very often leading 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different searches at any given time.
Yeah.
They really need to be very good when it comes to time management. My best advice would be to anyone trying to contact or build a relationship with a search consultant. Don't be generic. Don't do it cold. Normally, just try to get an introduction, maybe someone who knows that particular person. So try to get in the back door, through the back door.
Yeah.
And also personalize it and really offer them help. Can I be of help to you? Are you working on a difficult search? It's a two-way relationship at the end of the day. A lot of mistakes. Maybe we are going to be talking about this later on,
Yes.
but maybe the number one that I can think of is really seeing this whole networking thing as a one-way sort of thing. That what can I get out of the relationship? And I think that's just not the right way to.
That's not the right way. So you're saying, don't contact us. We'll find you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
And then, of course, LinkedIn is there to be on their radar, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
are a lot of headhunters like active on LinkedIn?
Yes, they are, and it's definitely one of the streams that we tend to use to identify people. But so now the issue is that some of the most senior people are not on LinkedIn. They're not really using it. So you really need to rely on your own networks. You really need to rely on referrals. We do a lot of sourcing calls with people who are basically they're very clued up. And that's how we get through to people. So LinkedIn is one way.
You are happy when someone is you're looking for someone and they're actually on LinkedIn. You're happy, right? Makes your job easier.
Yeah, of course. And I'm one of those who really try to seek out to build this network well in advance before I need it, because search firms need you, and you also need search firms. So
it's a partnership.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
definitely a partnership. Fantastic. So there's so much here. I highly recommend anyone who's interested in the topic. There's a lot of us watching. I can see YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. I highly recommend watching the replay. And by the way, if you're here on the replay, click right hashtag replay so we can say hello. Now, Arpad, you alluded to this. Let's talk about some common mistakes. What not to do when someone You said we don't contact us, we'll contact you, but we're also being proactive, right? We don't want to reach out only when we need you. We also want to build our network. There are some right ways and there are some wrong ways. Let's talk about what not to do.
So number one that I can
Yes.
think of, Sonal, is basically thinking about networking as a means that you a means to an end. So basically, you need to ask someone for something right away. I think people very often wrongly assume that networking, you're doing it because you want an immediate personal gain. I think that's why I would never suggest anyone to wait until they really need to look for another job, or they're about to get fired, or they're about to be made redundant. Think of it as really a long-term making friends for the future sort of exercise. I think that's probably the most helpful way to think about it, and don't just wait until the end to really build those relationships, because it's quite risky as a headhunter. It's quite risky to present someone who I don't know, or who I haven't had the chance to develop a relationship, to introduce them to a client. I mean, how I don't know the person, how would
And your reputation.
exactly? It's all about your reputation. In the headhunting business, you only do one bad search and you're done.
Oh, that's
With that particular
painful.
client. Yeah.
No, you're right. And clients can be so unforgiving,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
don't forget.
Because the price, or the you can lose a lot of money by making the wrong hiring decision, and
Yeah,
that's why
and
it's
the
basically
client tells three other friends, and then okay, you're done. So you're right. You're absolutely right. In most industries, but particularly in headhunting, your good name and your reputation is everything.
exactly.
So what you're saying is, when you reach out to a headhunter, do not immediately make an ask. Like you need something, you're in a desperate situation. That rubbing the pressure on the headhunter doesn't necessarily work. In fact, it
Yeah.
can hurt you.
Exactly. And I think the other one, number two, that I could think of is failing to assist the other person in any way. I think it's, rather than thinking, how can this person help me? I think probably the best way, and to build goodwill, by the way, with the consultant, so that next time they're going to be like, oh, he was really helpful. Even though the search mandate that I approached this particular individual was not relevant for him or her, he helped me out. So I'm definitely going to pick up the phone next time. That's basically it.
Ah, I see. I see.
So
Okay.
it's a mutually beneficial thing. Again, it's a two-way street. Don't think about me. Okay, not right for me, but how can I be of help to you, to the consultant? That's really important.
Ah, okay. And how can they be of help to you, Arpad?
By thinking of other sources, by thinking of people within their network. I mean, this is how we build our networks, by tapping into other people's networks. Basically, that's
Okay.
the
Okay.
that's
Don't be
that's
focused. Don't be selfish. Don't be focused on yourself.
exactly.
Also see how you can help. That's a fantastic point. And I'm going to make a little reference to a podcast that I did with a guy called David Wee, who is a brilliant LinkedIn writer. And he talked about being headhunted by Johnson and Johnson,
Yeah.
and every single time he was headhunted, he never applied to jobs. He was all, and he said one of the reasons that happened is because he kept in touch with
Yeah.
every headhunter. Happy Christmas, happy birthday, how are you, what are you working on these days, can I help you with something? Ah, yeah, I know a guy
Yeah.
who is the perfect for chief technology officer, I'm going to give him a call. So the headhunters always remembered him.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I
And
mean, this is probably the best way to keep on top of mind, on top
top
of
of
people.
mind.
Basically.
No, that's great. So do not fail. Do not forget that in a it's not a charity; it's a transaction. So you
Yeah.
give, you take. It's a little bit of
Yeah.
both.
Exactly.
Wise, very wise words. Adina, you work in aviation recruitment. You've got to connect with Arpad.
Yeah.
That's such a
Yeah.
great point. And if I'm not mistaken, I
Yeah.
think she's in Romania.
Yeah.
So I see a question here from Sky. What are the best ways to raise our profile to become interesting to headhunters? We were talking about it. How do we get on your radar?
Thought
To use
leadership.
aviation term, radar.
Yeah.
Fancy.
Exactly. That's yeah. That's the only way I can understand. But no, it's a thought leadership would be probably the best way to do it. Basically, use every opportunity that you can speak. I mean, basically there are so many ways to raise your profile. Write articles, blog posts, use LinkedIn. Organize events. I mean, you can use your. Don't. That would have been my third tip. Don't limit your networking to professional events, especially in 2021. I mean, there are very few in-person events still. Make use of LinkedIn groups, make use of various organizations in your local area, join societies, I mean, whatever your interest or whatever your professional, whatever you do for a living, there must be some kind of professional body that you can join. If you're a lawyer, that can be the law society of the country that you are based in. If you're a teacher, it can be your local teachers regulator. I think it's basically you just need to be very proactive. LinkedIn is probably the best tool that we have today, where you can really showcase your knowledge, what sets you out. Having a good profile on LinkedIn is helpful, but it's ground zero. It's what you do with the profile. It's basically how you really present yourself. You're a business of one at the end of the day, and it's you really, even if you're working for a big organization, what if they fire you tomorrow? I mean, it's basically you can't be sure that you're going to be there for the next 20 years. It's your personal brand that we talk about it all the time. You really need to think of yourself as the CEO of You Inc. So
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that you're bringing all this up because I talk about this all the time. Sky, if I'm not mistaken, I think I remember your name. I think you're very active on Quora and you manage a bunch of groups and you do a lot of questions and answers. Maybe bring some of that to LinkedIn as well. Hang out where other headhunters hang out. And it's a
exactly.
little bit easier to be in under their radar when you kind of are on the same runway. Another airline reference. So
Yeah,
that was pretty bad.
yeah,
And Risto says here, 100% agree. Don't wait till you need a job. Start already much earlier. The best time to plant a tree. Absolutely. And
exactly.
Varsha, it's just, I mean, as someone also who's been in HR before, I can tell you, when someone reaches out only when they need something,
Yep.
okay, sometimes you got to do it, but it's not the best way to start a relationship.
No,
So
no,
understand.
no. And even before you leap, you really need to reflect. And I think before you start contacting people, I think you
Yeah.
really need to understand, because when you talk to a headhunter, Sonal, I think you really need to have your pitch ready. I mean, it basically
Yeah.
it's like 2-3 bullet points. Okay, you're talking to people who don't have the time. I mean, it's basically they're again not in the business of having a chat,
Yeah.
and you really need to get ready. You need to determine what you bring to the table, like the 2-3 selling points that you have,
Yeah.
and how you can contribute to your next organization, basically. And then once they have that, they will make the note in the system, and then they will connect you when they get instructed on something that can be relevant to you.
Perfect. So the pitch doesn't have to be something fancy. Who you
No.
are, what you do and what do you bring to the table, rather than fumble around with in your head. You got paragraphs in your head, just maybe 2, 3 bullet
Yeah,
points. You're gonna thank us later, and headhunters will thank you later.
exactly,
So
exactly.
perfect. And Arpad, any other mistakes and not to dos?
I think again the another one that comes to mind is generic approaches when you're really like I sometimes receive these quite mindlessly sent out emails, basically like hoping that someone is going to get back to me, or someone is going to talk to me. Well, no. I think it's basically it's just no one is going to take pity on you. There's the competition is insane out there, and
Yes.
you really need to differentiate yourself. Not understanding that generosity will help you stand out of the crowd. Reciprocity, like not really like ego is very often the enemy. So now, and basically, you just need to set that aside. Okay, I understand that you want the job. You need to make a move, but I mean, it's like a little bit like dating. I mean, you're not going to go to the altar immediately. I mean, it's not like we don't know each other. I mean, what are you talking about? I'm not going to jump into bed with you and everything. I mean, it's like that's not how it works.
No, it is never how it works. And if that is how it's working, that is not.
No, I mean, it's basically that's not what you're
That's
looking
not
for
what
because
you
it's not a
want, because
long
that's wham
term
bam.
sort
I
of.
talk
Yeah,
about wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Literally, that is not what you want. You
yeah,
want a
yeah,
little bit more dating, foreplay.
yeah.
Okay,
Exactly,
I'm not
exactly,
liking where this is going,
exactly.
but I completely understand where you're coming from. So avoid generic. What you're saying is be specific, get to the point, don't waste the other person's
Yeah,
time. And if they have something for you, like Arpad, you if you have something for me, you'll tell me, right? Otherwise,
exactly, exactly.
you'll keep me warm. You'll maybe have a chat with me when you have a little bit more time and you want to do candidate sourcing. But
Yeah,
during times of war and
yeah,
peace, I mean, I'm guessing during war, you
exactly.
have a mission, and you're only focused on the mission.
And following up, so it's not just a one-off chat. I think it's a lot of
Ah,
people say, "Oh, yeah, we spoke like 3 or 4 or 6 months ago, or maybe a year ago. Okay, great. Have I heard from you for the past 6 months? Did you follow up with me? Did you? It's you need to realize that um, it's a headhunter is not just a source of job opportunities. A headhunter can be. I mean, they're quite clued up into the market, and they're well informed. They can advise you how to position yourself, what is hot, what is not at the moment, like what sort of industries are hiring. I mean, it's also you're not only there for the job. I mean, it's the insights that the headhunter provides. I mean, that's why we are paid, because um, not allocating jobs. It's the market knowledge, it's the industry insights, it's the know-how, the fact that we are attending in-person events, trade shows, exhibitions. We're talking to the C-level guys at the various organizations that you
yes.
might want to get into. I mean, that's the added value, and this is why you want to touch base from time to time with us.
That is the added value. And oh my gosh, that's so much value. So, absolutely fantastic. I'm going to quickly summarize what you just said. Obviously, the fortune is in the follow up. Don't write one little email and the headhunter didn't get back to you. Maybe they were busy with the search or they're doing 4 searches at the same time. It doesn't mean they're ghosting you. Don't be sensitive about it. Write to them again in a month's time. And, they'll reach out. And there's more to headhunters than placing you in a job. There's market knowledge, there's business knowledge. You're meeting the C suite on a regular basis, so you have way more insights than a classic sort of, you
Yeah.
know middle to lower level recruiter. So that's a great point. Arpad, before we continue, I'm just going to jump into the comments. Al Reese said that positioning, it's not necessary to be first, but it's necessary to be the client, to be here. Yeah, client's mind. That's absolutely
Yeah,
it. And top of the mind recall, right? That's so powerful.
yeah,
Bring
yeah,
your value proposition, and it doesn't have to be salesy. It doesn't have to be icky. You're not, selling yourself. You're describing yourself so the person remembers. Ah, yes, Arpad. Yes,
yeah,
aviation recruitment. I
yeah,
remember
yeah.
him. That's it. It's a little bit of jogging the memory thing. Our friend Jeff is
Yeah.
here in Ohio. Fantastic. I see a question here from Naveen. So, how to get the headhunter into getting exact feedback, which is sometimes quite painful.
Yeah, feedback really important. We do give feedback, but not to. I mean, basically, with finalist candidates, for example. I mean, it's basically when you get to the
Yeah.
shortlist normally is around 3, 4, 5 people maximum,
Yeah.
and then all of those 5 people are basically they receive proper shortlist because they were interviewed. They need to know. I mean, it's
Yeah.
basically you need to ask for it, and this is the way that you can get smart. You can develop. I think you need to ask for it. You really need to go, Naveen, and say, okay, I really need to improve, even if especially if you didn't get the job. I mean, it's basically, okay, be blunt with me. Was it the style? Was it the communication? Was it the experience? And the best headhunters will give you at
Yes.
least 2, 3 bullet points that you can really take away, improve, reflect upon, and be better next time.
Yes. Yes. And they are also interested in seeing you happy, even if you didn't
Yeah,
get the job, because it's a long term relationship.
Exactly.
So that's a great point. A pitch is to better to keep them wanting more rather than wear them down. Yeah, you do much. You don't want a detailed pitch because they'll be like, "Holy cow! Like I need to sit down." I just
No,
heard
it
it
really
enough.
needs to be something that doesn't destroy someone's confidence, but builds up on it basically, and something that they can really take away and really just action.
Yeah, absolutely. And Binil, kindness and respect never go out of style.
Yeah,
Never go out of style.
okay.
So that's fantastic. And another quick question is, what is the best way to summarize the breadth of your experience in a concise and interesting way? So basically, like, how do you make a great pitch? That's what Sky is asking.
It has to be concise and compelling. The career narrative. I think it basically those are the ones. Think in terms of bullet points and think in terms of adding value. Because people, what kind of people get hired these days? Those who can make money, like the sales, business development people. Those who can make efficiencies, like the procurement guys, operational efficiencies, and also those who bring like a specific know-how, like the thought leadership, things like.
Got it.
I think no more than three bullet points and
Mhm.
numbers, digits. Headhunters, hiring managers love numbers and
Me too.
statistics and things
Yeah.
like that, and basically just hone in on those. That's good.
Yeah.
That's the
Ah,
because
so you're
numbers
saying
speak a lot.
in a brief introduction where we're talking about our experience, you're saying already put numbers in the, so like the achievement type of stuff in the description itself?
An executive bio for networking purposes is probably the best because you're not hitting someone on the head with an unsolicited CV. You're really just, it's a more subtle way to get an introduction. Maybe they will find it interesting. Maybe they will want to have a conversation with you. But in that bio, don't just regurgitate stuff that you've done in the past, but think with the future in mind. Where
Yes.
do you want to get to?
Yes.
And basically just build those bullet points with the next step in mind.
Okay, got it. And once you do this properly, I think that it helps long term, right? You
Yeah,
can reuse that again and again.
exactly.
Obviously, adapt to your audience, read the room. You don't want to regurgitate, like you said, old stuff which is used to be relevant in aviation recruiting, and suddenly they're like, "Hey,
Yeah,
what's going on? We don't know what you're talking about. Hello, air traffic control."
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Understood. Love it. Fantastic. And now I see. Oh, I saw another great comment on follow up. I love that, Jeff, that you think of follow up as garden because otherwise it dies on the vine.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
great metaphor.
No,
That's a great
that's
metaphor.
fantastic. That's
Yeah,
it.
fantastic. All right, fantastic. Now Niatu is a career coach based in New York, and he's asking, can you discuss the pathway a candidate follows if they submit their resume or create a profile through a major headhunters candidate portal? Is it a viable option to get on their radar?
Yes, of course. I mean, we receive. I used to be with Spencer Stewart, one of the big headhunting firms globally, a US one, and we regularly received emails. Just because you don't get a response as a candidate, because we are not working on something that is relevant for you at that given moment, an associate or senior associate will take the time to read it and put you on the database, and that's probably the best way to get on the radar of search firms. Don't get disappointed if you don't hear back. Again, we're not chit chatting.
Yes.
But it's basically it doesn't mean that you are not on the radar. In fact, I really encourage everyone to send an email. It's being looked at and it's being recorded in the database, basically. So
Perfect.
it's
Perfect. Maybe any email won't hurt saying, hey, I've done
no,
this,
no,
just, so that
exactly.
they remember it. But that's a great point. I want to highlight two things here. Number one, um, Arpad, you walked the talk because when we started, you said that the more niche the headhunter is, the better it is for you, and the more easier it is for you to find this person. So you're someone who's working in the industrial space, anything that moves, transportation, aviation. So that's normal. I mean, if I had brought in a headhunter today who says, I do everything, like consumer electronics, retail, L'Oreal, booking.com. Yeah, yeah, we hire for everyone. That's a little not that common, right? And the second thing is, if you're going to reach out to someone like Arpad or anyone else who's in the executive recruitment, I don't like headhunting. It just, like I said, it sounds like, yeah, somebody's off for cannibalizing. um, the last thing you want to do is, hi, Arpad, how are you today?
No, 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 no. I'm fine today and tomorrow as well. And
Yeah, you're
thank you.
you're you're not going to get a response. I mean, the worst case scenario, they might block you. The best case scenario, I don't think you're getting a response. So don't waste people's time. Focus on exactly what you're looking at. Like Jeff said, that's a great point. And in case anyone's interested, there's a book called Positioning that my learned friend in Helsinki is mentioning to us. Thank you, Risto, for the recommendation.
Yeah.
Milena. So Milena is a friend of mine who's in Eurocontrol in Maastricht, and she's talking about air traffic management. We have so many metaphors when it comes to air traffic.
Yeah.
Are we ready to take off? Is our project?
Yeah. 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 Always.
There's so
Yeah.
many metaphors. Hey, Milena. So fantastic. One more question from Naveen. How do you break the ice with C-suite headhunters over and above typical industry or hiring, pattern discussions?
Breaking the ice is basically do a lot of research on them. Again, those questions that I mentioned earlier in the conversation, basically like what's your role within the firm? What do you focus your practice on? Tell me about your past experiences placing someone like myself. What are the difficulties? What are the... I think that's probably the best way to really just turn it around
Yeah.
and learn more about them and really just show genuine interest in them. I think that's probably the best way to break the ice with anyone, not only with
Yes.
but again, being precise, being like showing that you've done your due diligence, your homework, that you're not wasting their time. I think it's really, really, that will earn you a lot of brownie points. And I mean, that's probably the best advice I can
Perfect.
give you.
Fantastic. So Niyat, Arpad, is there anything we have not covered? So we did what not to do, but you also kind of also gave us pointers on what to do. But other than this, what are some ways that you've seen people reach out to you or in general headhunter networking that you see are best practices that work really well?
Yeah, I think it's. I really like people who are basically they take ownership of the process. What do I mean by that? Getting smart, especially when you're trying to consider a shift in the industry, for example, that you're working in. Like aviation has not been doing great for the past 2 years now. A lot of people went from aviation to other like logistics, cargo, freight, other things that are doing better. You really need to get educated quickly on the new sector. You really need to build up your... This is what I call getting smart. So even before you reach out to the consultant, reading, um, um, understanding the dynamics of your target sector. But even if you're not trying to do any big change, dramatic change, reading the Financial Times, being able to really comment on current issues, whatever affecting your industry, having this global view on your sector. And again, being patient, saying thanks. I think that's also, as basic as it sounds, really important. Don't overlook a good thank you note that really can set you apart as well. Patience, I think that's really important. I mean, again, these people are busy. The interviewing life cycle is taking forever these days. I mean, it's so difficult to place anyone at the moment. Good people have a lot of different options. And to close a search, so now right now, it can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months, basically.
Oh, I
That's what
know.
we're
And these
seeing.
are the same companies who are talking online and, advertising about how agile they are. And they're like,
Yeah,
uh, like select someone already. So
exactly.
I feel, I feel like that hasn't changed. Like you would think COVID makes people think a little bit more on their feet and are like, I know what I want. Not, I feel like people are also going back to the old ways very quickly. You see that?
Yeah, I do, and the average number of decision makers have increased as well from 2 to 3, all the way up to. I mean, there are some searches that I'm currently doing where there are 4 or 5 decision makers who have an equal say. I mean, and that's what makes
Yeah.
it really drag out
Yeah.
forever. Basically,
No,
that's
that's
the...
true. Especially in very consensus driven organizations where they all need to have they need to bless you. Then you
Yeah.
have to wait for that person. That person may be on holiday and this and that, and then so yes, patience is a virtue. Very, very rightly said. So
Yeah.
to summarize what you said, do educate yourself beforehand. Don't necessarily go out thinking, let me pick this person's brains. Do that, but also where you bring something to the table, right? And you are taking ownership of the process. Do not forget your manners.
Yeah.
Easier said than done. We all think we're pretty well mannered and we're pretty well brought up, but things like, thank you so much, Arpad, I really appreciate it, I know how hard you work, people don't do that. It's always me, and
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
inward focus. At it, I saw a very sweet point here: attitude of gratitude.
Yeah.
It just shows.
That's that. That's
It shows in the way you talk to people. Glad to have you on board, Jeff. um, Niatu saying thank you for clarification, because people tend to think that once they have submitted their resume in these internal systems, it goes into some sort of black hole. A lot of us have that perception. So you're saying it depends even in
no.
the
I
big
mean,
ones, because Arpath, isn't the internal database the first place you look,
but
not LinkedIn?
of course. I mean, it's basically in the case of Spencer Stewart, for example, there's a database which is very sophisticated. It consists of years of research, commentary, all that. I mean, you have to remember that LinkedIn is quite an incomplete thing. You can't really make a decision on anyone. I mean, most people don't spend time on it at all. They don't put in the effort that is needed. So that's when a good internal solid database comes handy, basically, and that's our primary way of modus operandi,
Yeah.
as they
Yeah.
say. The other thing, before I forget it, staying engaged, really important, even if you've been made redundant or are in between opportunities at the moment. Making sure that you stay active and connected is really important. How do you do that? Why not join the board of a non-profit organization, something that you care about, really? I mean, it doesn't have to be related to your field. It can be something that you really like, I don't know, a homelessness charity, whatever you really feel passionate about, so that you gain leadership skills as well. I mean, a lot of people ask me, oh, never led a team. Oh, okay. Have you gone out of your way to join a board of a nonprofit? Try to get involved there as a project manager, program manager, whatever you can. Even if it's not paid, it's a really good way to broaden out the skill set and really just do something useful in between roles. If you happen to be listening and you're in that situation when you really need
Yeah,
to
I think
fill the gap between.
yeah, and I think that the gap thing, what you're saying, is a very reality type of situation, because I'm guessing, Arpad, you still have clients who'll say, oh, he's not working today.
Oh yeah.
Like they'll have hesitation. Now, we're not going to talk about if it's right or wrong. That is a different topic altogether. We're not going to talk about 6 to 12 months. Yes, Erica, painful. We're not talk. That is not the scope of our discussion today. It is what it is. You got to sort of play with the rules, make your own, break a few, but at least you need to know what the rules are to begin with. So
Exactly.
if you can show that you've been active, particularly at the senior levels, it's definitely worth it. And then, yes, the
Particularly
risk
during
is higher.
COVID, so now, particularly during the COVID pandemic, I mean, it's basically, you can always say that, okay, been out of work for 2-3 months, maybe even up to 6 months, but the pandemic and all that, that's not going to be, you need to have a compelling narrative, basically. What did you, okay, you got made redundant. What did you do during that
Yeah.
time, basically?
Yeah, no, that's true. And so it's very true, because they're also not cheap candidates at that level, right? So yes, it does take longer, and yes, they want to ensure that they have bet on the right horse.
Yeah.
So makes sense.
Because
I think that,
unfortunately, when it comes to individual, there is a bias against people who are not in employment. I'll
yes,
share you how I think. So basically, when I see someone who's not in employment at the moment, okay, that means that you don't have the skill set that is required right now in the workforce. Um, you've been fired, maybe misconduct. So I always assume the negative, which is an unfortunate occupational side. Right? But this is how people, this especially headhunters, this is how they think, because anyone who's good is sought after
It's already
as in
taken.
employment. Basically, that's why just watch out for the careful with using open to work on LinkedIn as well. There are two types of headhunt or recruiters out there: those who actively seek out those people and want to help them
Yes.
and really have a conversation with them, understand their stories, really take the time to develop relationship. And the other one, okay, you've been fired, the skill set that you have is just not right, not relevant for today's context. There must be a really good reason why you're not in employment. So
Yeah.
just wanted to share that with
Yeah.
you. Not a nice way of thinking about it, very black and white, but that's how it is. I mean,
That's how it is. I really appreciate your honesty, Arpad, because most people will skirt around the issue and not get to the point. The reality is, human beings are flawed. The system is not perfect. You are not perfect. I'm not perfect. So, yes, there is a bias that when we see someone who's not employed, our first reaction is, what happened? Something. Yes, COVID has humanized it. But on the other hand, you cannot speak on behalf of every single client. Is it unfair? Yes. It's grossly unfair. Arpad, you're also a career coach. You have a like a moonlighting thing going on. So
yeah,
you
yeah,
help people also one on one. So you have seen the frustration from the other side, and the open to work green crescent thing. I've been talking about it for
yeah.
more than a year now. There's lots of reasons why you can have it. There's a lot of reasons why it doesn't work. Do what feels right to you. I'm personally not a fan of it, but
Mm.
that's my opinion. I would not use it if I were. Is there anything wrong with it? There's nothing
Don't,
wrong.
don't advertise. There's nothing wrong with it, but don't advertise it actively. Basically, that's what I
Yeah,
would
that's
say.
your opinion. Okay, fantastic. I appreciate that honesty here,
Yeah,
because none of this is, we're not talking about being politically correct here. We're
no,
talking about insider secrets
yeah,
that
exactly.
we need to know, even if we don't like it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
So
exactly.
fantastic. I see a question here from Shelley, who's a former recruiter as well, and former HR director. In your opinion, Arpad, if
Yeah.
someone wants to make a career pivot, industry or role, or a complete change, should they bother trying to work with a headhunter?
Making a change is very difficult, of course, especially when you want to change your role, your geography, your industry. I mean, very few people do all that at the same time. Not even MBA graduates manage to make that happen all at the same time. Yes, would encourage to do that. Work with them because they have the industry knowledge, the insights, the companies that you might be interested in. They might not have the roles for you, but they know the temperature. Um, I mean, is aviation a good place to be in right now? Well, commercial aviation, no. But when it comes to private business, yes. Cargo, freight,
Yes.
yes. Other
Yes.
types of transportation, definitely. Logistics, yes. I mean, um, it's good to talk to them because although they might not have the job for you today, you get on their radar and you will be getting the insider info on the sector that you are targeting as well. So definitely, yeah, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So I really appreciate that detailed answer. And I also saw a couple of other questions. We're getting close to the 1 hour mark. Time has flown,
Yeah,
Arpad.
yeah.
Let's see. Prashant says, what do you want to be careful of applying to headhunters based in other countries? How can people reach out to headhunters who are not in their home country? Is there a certain way?
Most search firms, especially the big ones, are present all over the world. Basically, like they have multiple offices. My
Yes.
best advice would be to really just seek them out in your
The
home
local
country. So
office?
basically, don't send your CV to New York or London or
Yes.
Tokyo or wherever. If you're based in Australia, then basically just seek out the ones that are closest to you in Sydney, in Melbourne, in the big cities. Basically, that's probably the best way to go about it. And they can always connect you with their colleagues in other geographies as well. Basically,
Okay, fantastic. So reach out to the one closest to
yeah,
you, right?
yeah,
There's always a little bit of a positive bias to someone who's already closer to us in our home
yeah.
city. I don't see your name, LinkedIn user. How do headhunters view candidates who follow up or touch base by sharing some good market intel and also look for updates on their candidacy?
I mean,
Is
that's
there a
probably the
right
best.
way to follow up or wrong way to follow up?
That's probably the most helpful way of following up because you're providing them with the data, the insights, the art. I mean, thought leadership as well. I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's standing out by being a good
A good
helper
person, a good
or a
person.
source. We call them
Yeah.
source.
Yeah.
Sources are people who are not candidates, but they can get us one step closer to the candidates. Basically, I think
Ah.
that's really really helpful, and the more info you can provide us with, the better, really, because we can help you as well um, going forward better
Yeah.
if we know a lot more about you. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. All right, fantastic. And Erica says, for senior roles, it's not necessarily the best thing to have the open to work. It works well for something which hires quickly or is at a little
Um,
bit more junior level. It works really, really well there.
it could work, for example, for interim. We do quite a lot of interim work as well. And basically, for interims, okay, my project ended. I'm open.
Yeah.
No, that's a completely different thing from a CFO who just been fired and basically are looking for something. Yeah. So
All right,
that's
fantastic. And any other things you should avoid when it comes, sorry, any other right ways to approach anything that you feel we haven't covered?
I think the email, like an introduction email, I think probably the best, maybe just to give some practicalities here, a really quick summary line as to who you are, what you've been doing, what are you looking for, and the main selling points in 3 or 4 bullet points. Basically, that's probably the best kind of email. Please find attach my CV to this email. That's the only type of email that will ever get read by a hiring manager or a headhunter or recruiter, basically. And I would really encourage you to use the bullet point format. I'm a lawyer. But I don't. Not even I like long worded paragraphs.
What kind of lawyer are you?
Oh my gosh, not a, yeah.
This is a great point, Arpad, because I feel like this is one of those things that can be this or that.
Hmm.
When I was starting out, I've changed, but when I was starting out with coaching, initially, what I used to tell people is reach out to headhunters, but don't flood them with your information and resume
No,
yet. First, you want to test the waters. But now, what I'm thinking is after today, maybe reach out with the resume. Don't waste their time because I- my initial thought was if they're interested, they'll ask you for the resume. But now you're
yeah.
saying just send the damn resume.
Send it over. There will be someone. No, obviously, it's not going to be the partner who will do that, but the associate, senior associate, who works under the partner, and
Yes.
they work for multiple partners, by the way. So an
Yeah.
associate talking to an associate in a search firm is probably even better because they are more clued up to
They're more
what's
clued
going
up.
on in multiple different sectors, not only the one thing the partner is working on, basically.
Understood. Lovely. Fantastic. I really, really appreciate the honesty. So, Arpad, one question for you. What has been the most surprising experience in your headhunting career with a particular candidate? What did that person, talk to us about that candidate experience? It's a good question coming from Sky.
Yeah. um,
Do you remember?
I think yes, I do, and I think they're not necessarily positive. The most surprising, I don't like surprises. In fact, I hate surprises.
Exactly.
And like, and I can unfortunately I can only think of negative experiences. Someone who really withheld information, especially salary compensation related information, until the very end, and basically the whole thing after 6 or 7 months falling through the cracks because of dishonesty and not being upfront and honest with really critical information. Basically, that's the not wanting to move across geographies. Like we were trying to get someone from
When they take a
Europe down,
180-degree turn.
and then they took 100. Basically, they said that, oh, by the way, my family, my wife, and all that, and basically they didn't talk to us about their family and their wife and all that up until the last minute,
Ugh,
and then basically
that
they
is
said
painful.
no.
Yes, I know. I've been through this. This is painful. Arpad, I have a follow-up question here because you brought up salary, and I love the
Yeah,
topic of salary,
yeah,
salary negotiation. I
yeah,
talk about
yeah.
it a lot. Now, there are two schools of thought, and I want to know which one you prefer. The first school of thought says that bring up salary early in the process. Now, I know you're a headhunter, but I'm looking at it with a company. And sometimes people can bypass the headhunter.
Yeah,
I've seen
of
it
course.
happen.
course.
Some people say bring up salary early in the process in terms of your expectations because you are not wasting their time, and don't wait for later because it might become painful. Uh, the second school of thought is what I have, which is controversial. And I'm like, listen, if they want to know what you earned today, share it. If you're on the higher side, it's a good thing. If you're not on the higher side, then share expectations. But my thing is, once you're closer to the job, it's easier. Sorry, when you're closer to the job offer, it's easier to negotiate because they like you already and they are now invested. If they have made you an offer, they've invested. So you can say, okay, you're offering me 200,000. I was hoping for something closer to 230. So is that all right at that level? Do you hate this approach? Like, what is your opinion?
I cover salary compensation and all that in my very first conversation with very first screening
Yeah.
call with someone, so that I know what to
What do
expect,
you
where
ask the
the area
person
is.
when you do that screening?
Tell me where you are, basically. I mean, it doesn't have to be an exact figure. It has to be really like so that I know their walkaway rate, the minimum that they would accept the job offer, and their ideal sort of rate. So even a range at
Got
the
it.
very beginning is
Got it.
fine. It doesn't have to be the minutest of details, but I really need to know, are we in the right ballpark, or it's a huge or like a monumental
Because
waste
you
of
don't
our
want to waste
time. Yeah,
anyone's time.
yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. I understand. All
And
right.
it's better to clear the air right at the very beginning than wait until the very end and then basically get disappointed.
No, I understand that. So this is what I meant. Obviously, when you're starting out, you want to make sure it's in that range.
Yeah,
Somebody has done their due diligence. The company will do it. They will not waste their time
yeah,
just to find out you wanted 300 and their budget is 200. It's ridiculous. So that's where a good headhunter comes into picture. That's where a good headhunter is helpful. All right,
yeah.
fantastic.
Okay.
Last question. We're 4 minutes close, 4 minutes from the hour. Last question here. Arpad, what is the MO of a headhunter to attract the right candidate?
Of that, it's well, doing the research right. I think that's really important. We normally start the process with drawing up a target company list. Then you need to understand what business units that you're looking at, and basically it really needs to be laser sharply targeted to the individual so that they immediately understand, okay, that's relevant. It's just like a candidate approach to headhunters. It's the same is true vice versa. You really want to show that, yeah, you've done the due diligence. It's not a cold, blind approach, but you are basically you've done your homework, and this is a well thought out, precise approach to the specific individual, basically. And I think that's how you engage people. That's how you get them respond to your message or your phone call. I think that's probably the best way to attract the first conversation to you, basically.
Okay.
That's the yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So there's a lot in here. I'm going to do a quick recap because we covered a lot in terms of the insider guide to networking. First of all, if you're not following Arpad, what are you doing with yourself? Please go and follow him on LinkedIn. He posts regular, insider, fresh, honest content that will help you whether you're looking for a job or not. Remember, we said networking is the long game. So we talked today about how headhunting is different from recruiting. There are some differences, how a right headhunter can help you, and how can you find the right headhunter. So if you're just logging in, you're welcome, but do come in and watch the replay. We talked about common mistakes that you need to avoid. There is a certain right way and a wrong way of approaching. And so there's so many points that we covered about being super selective. Like, I like that you said laser sharp focus. Do not reach out only when you need something. With headhunters, it doesn't work that way. Do not fail to forget that you're actually someone who could help them. You could be a source. I like that you you have a word for people who are not candidates, but they're a source. Avoid generic email, which is true across the board, not just for headhunters. Fortune is all follow up is also a fantastic advice for anyone, not just for headhunters. When you do reach out, also learn from them, learn from their market insights. They know things that LinkedIn doesn't know, that people at your level don't know. So take
Yeah.
advantage of that. Educate yourself before you reach out. Take ownership of the process. Don't forget your manners. There is a bias against unemployed people. Like it or not, it exists. And Arpad talks about fantastic ways to manage it. Fantastic. So, Arpad, this has been such an education. Really appreciate your time with us today. And yeah, so how many searches are you working on right now?
Around five at the moment. So basically, it's really difficult ones all around the world. Not an easy time to successfully conclude searches. To be honest with you,
You really think
it's a
what they're saying is
very
true?
candidate-driven market. To be
I was
honest
going to
with
say
you,
that. Do you really think that it's candidate driven now compared
it
to
is.
last year at
It
this
is.
time? It's changed?
It is, and good people have multiple options, and
Yes.
they're very, very selective. And it, it's good that they are, but that makes our job really difficult. To be
Yes, it
honest with you,
does.
it's
Yes,
yeah.
it does. It does. So listen, a lot of happy hunting with all
Thank
those
you, thank
heads.
you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wish you the best. And thanks to everyone for being with us today. It was a lot more fun with your questions. It came to life. Appreciate you joining us. And see you at the same time next week here on hashtag Supercharged Fridays. Bye, everyone.
Bye, bye, bye.